Now let me tell you about the day the galaxy's most feared predators made the tactical error of kidnapping an 8-year-old human girl named Emma Martinez. And no, this isn't going to end the way you think it will. Emma was what you might call a peculiar child. While other kids her age were collecting Pokemon cards or obsessing over the latest animated movie, Emma had developed an unusual fascination with what she called pretty sparkly rocks. Her backyard looked like a geological survey site had exploded, with carefully organized piles of minerals, crystals, and various chunks of space debris that definitely shouldn't have been lying around suburban Cleveland. "Mr. Whiskers, look at this one," Emma chirped to her hamster, holding up a particularly iridescent purple stone that hummed with barely contained energy. "It's even prettier than the blue one Daddy brought back from his business trip to Alpha Centauri." Mr. Whiskers, being a hamster of sophisticated tastes, was more interested in the sunflower seeds Emma had scattered around her latest geological discovery. Smart hamster. He had his priorities straight. Meanwhile, approximately 47 light-years away, 3 of the Draconian Empire's most elite operatives were receiving what they believed to be their most important mission yet. Commander Scales McBurnface, a 20-foot-tall emerald-green death machine with anger management issues, stood at attention in the briefing room of their Dreadnought-class warship, the inevitable Doom. "Gentlemen," Commander Scales announced to his crew, his voice carrying the gravitas of someone who'd conquered 17 star systems before lunch, "we have been tasked with capturing the most dangerous human specimen in the galaxy." Lieutenant Fang the Dramatic, a sleek black dragon with a flair for the theatrical and an unfortunate tendency to monologue, spread his wings dramatically. "At last, a worthy opponent. Someone who can match our fearsome reputation." Sergeant Claw the Perpetually Confused, a brown dragon who looked like he'd been designed by committee and assembled by someone who'd lost the instruction manual, raised a tentative claw. Sir, the intelligence report just says to capture a human from coordinates 41.4993 north, 81.6944 west. It doesn't mention anything about them being dangerous." Commander Scales snorted, a puff of smoke escaping his nostrils. "Sergeant, use your brain. Why else would the High Command specifically request this particular human? They must possess some terrible secret weapon or forbidden knowledge." The truth, of course, was far more mundane and infinitely more ridiculous. The Draconian Empire's intelligence network, which was about as reliable as a chocolate teapot, had intercepted a communication mentioning Emma Martinez, and enough raw material to power a small planet. What they hadn't bothered to verify was that this was a joke Emma's father had made about her rock collection during a casual phone call to his brother. But bureaucratic incompetence waits for no dragon, and within 6 hours the inevitable Doom had made the jump to hyperspace, its crew convinced they were about to capture humanity's greatest threat. Back in Cleveland, Emma was having a perfectly normal Tuesday afternoon, which for her meant teaching Mr. Whiskers how to navigate an obstacle course made entirely of crystalline formations from the Vega system. She had no idea that her quiet suburban existence was about to become significantly more interesting. "Don't worry, Mr. Whiskers," she said, carefully placing the hamster at the starting line of her makeshift course. "If you can master the sparkly rock maze, you'll be ready for anything the universe throws at us." Famous last words, really. The inevitable Doom materialized in Earth's atmosphere, with all the subtlety of a freight train crashing into a fireworks factory. Emma looked up from her hamster training session just in time to see 3 enormous dragons descending from the sky like the world's most terrifying paratrooper unit. Most 8-year-olds would have screamed, run, or at the very least wet themselves. Emma Martinez, however, was not most 8-year-olds. "Oh wow," she exclaimed, clapping her hands together. "Are you guys here for the rock show? Daddy said it wasn't until next week, but this is so much better." Commander Scales landed with a ground-shaking thud, his emerald scales gleaming menacingly in the afternoon sun. He drew himself up to his full imposing height, and prepared to deliver his standard intimidation speech. "Foolish human child. You have been chosen by the mighty Draconian Empire to. Your scales are so pretty." Emma interrupted, completely ignoring the death and destruction vibe he was going for. "Are they real? Can I touch one? Oh my gosh, you're like a giant flying lizard. Do you breathe fire? Please tell me you breathe fire." Lieutenant Fang, not to be outdone in the dramatic entrance department, swooped down and struck what he considered to be a fearsome pose. "Tremble before our terrible majesty, tiny human. We are the harbingers of your. You have the most beautiful wings." Emma squealed, running over to get a closer look. "They're like bat wings, but bigger. And shinier. Do they make a swooshy sound when you fly?" "I bet they make a swooshy sound." Sergeant Claw landed last, looking confused as usual. Sir? I don't think she's trembling. In fact, I think she's trying to pet Lieutenant Fang. I am not trying to pet him, Emma corrected indignantly. I'm trying to examine the wing membrane structure for signs of evolutionary adaptation to atmospheric flight. Duh. She paused. But also yes, I would totally pet him if he'd let me. Commander Scales stared at the small human, who was currently attempting to measure Fang's wingspan with her arms. This was not going according to plan. Child, you will come with us immediately. Resistance is futile. Ooh, are we going on a field trip? Emma bounced excitedly. I love field trips. Can Mr. Whiskers come too? He gets really lonely when I'm gone. She scooped up her hamster, who took one look at the dragons and decided that his sunflower seeds weren't worth this level of drama. This is not a field trip. Commander Scales roared, flames shooting from his nostrils for emphasis. This is an abduction. You are our prisoner. Emma tilted her head thoughtfully. That sounds way less fun than a field trip. Are you sure we can't just call it a field trip? I brought juice boxes. She held up a small cooler. Apple juice. It's my favorite. Lieutenant Fang leaned over to whisper to his commander. Sir, I'm starting to think our intelligence was wrong about this human being dangerous. Oh, I can be super dangerous. Emma chimed in helpfully. Last week I accidentally broke Mrs. Henderson's fence with one of my rock experiments. Daddy had to pay for a whole new fence. But don't worry, I promise I won't break anything on your spaceship, unless it's an accident. The three dragons exchanged glances. This was definitely not the kind of dangerous they'd been expecting. Their ship's AI, Karen, chose that moment to chime in over the communicator. Attention crew, I've analyzed the target's behavior patterns and determined that she exhibits classic signs of Stockholm Syndrome, except in reverse. She appears to have kidnapped herself. This is highly irregular. Please consult your user manual. Karen. Commander Scales growled, we don't have time for your commentary. Of course you do. Karen replied in her most helpful voice. You've been standing here for 7 minutes while a small human child explains the aerodynamics of dragon flight to Lieutenant Fang. Your schedule has plenty of flexibility. Emma gasped. Your computer can talk. That's so cool. Hi computer. I'm Emma. What's your name? My designation is Kinetic Analytical Response Enhancement Network, but you may call me Karen. I'm programmed to be maximally helpful. That's a really long name. Emma said thoughtfully. Can I just call you Karen? That's much easier. I would prefer my full designation. Karen it is, Emma declared. This is the best field trip ever. Commander Scales rubbed his temples with his claws. He was beginning to suspect this mission was not going to go as smoothly as planned. 30 minutes later, Emma found herself aboard the inevitable Doom, sitting in what was supposed to be a terrifying interrogation chamber, but looked more like a really cool spaceship room with mood lighting. She was currently sharing her apple juice with Sergeant Claw, who had discovered that human beverages were surprisingly refreshing after a long day of failed intimidation. All right, human. Commander Scales began, trying to regain some semblance of control over the situation. You will tell us everything about Earth's military capabilities, your weapons technology, and your species' plans for galactic domination. Emma paused mid-sip of her juice box. Well, my mom has this really scary vacuum cleaner that makes a loud noise, and my dad owns a leaf blower. Oh, and Mrs. Peterson next door has a garden gnome that I'm pretty sure is plotting something. Does that count? No, that does not count. Commander Scales snapped. We need strategic intelligence. Military secrets. Plans for world conquest. Ooh, I know about conquest. Emma said brightly. In Risk, the board game, you want to control Australia first because it's easier to defend. But I don't think that works in real life, because Australia has all those scary spiders. Lieutenant Fang stepped forward, his wings spread dramatically. Perhaps a more direct approach is needed. Behold, small human. The terrors that await those who defy the draconian empire. He gestured grandly, and the chamber's holographic projectors came to life, filling the room with nightmarish creatures from the dragon's homeworld. A massive tentacled beast with 17 eyes and acidic drool materialized in front of Emma. She studied it carefully, then raised her hand like she was in school. Yes? Lieutenant Fang asked, somewhat confused. I'd rate this one a 7 out of 10 for scariness, but an 11 out of 10 for cuteness. Look at those little tentacles. They're so wiggly. Can I pet it? It's a hologram. Sergeant Claw pointed out helpfully. Also, it's supposed to be terrifying. It's killed 17 of our bravest warriors. That's so sad, Emma said sympathetically. Maybe they just needed better communication skills. Sometimes when Mr. Whiskers bites me, it's because he's scared or hungry, not because he's actually mean. Commander Scales activated another hologram. This one was a skeletal creature with flaming eye sockets and razor-sharp claws. What about this one? This is a bone ripper from the depths of the Andromeda Nightmare Zone. Emma tilted her head thoughtfully. He looks lonely. I bet he'd be much happier if he had some friends. Do you think he likes board games? I could teach him Monopoly, but I should probably warn him that it ends friendships. Karen, Commander Scales said through gritted teeth, activate the psychological warfare protocols. I'm sorry, Commander, Karen replied in her most annoyingly helpful tone, but I've been monitoring the subject's stress levels, and they're actually decreasing. She appears to be enjoying herself. This is highly irregular for an interrogation. Perhaps you should consult the manual. The manual doesn't have a section on dealing with overly friendly human children. Commander Scales roared. Have you tried turning her off and on again? Karen suggested. That's not how humans work. Lieutenant Fang protested. Emma, meanwhile, had pulled a small container from her pocket and was carefully organizing something on the interrogation table. Hey, do you guys want to play patty cake? I can teach you. It's super fun. We are terrifying space dragons. Commander Scales declared. We do not play patty cake. Everyone can play patty cake. Emma said matter-of-factly. You just need hands. Or claws. Or tentacles. The tentacle monster could probably play patty cake with like 8 different people at once. That would be so cool. Sergeant Claw looked intrigued despite himself. How do you play this patty cake? Sergeant. Commander Scales snapped. You will not learn human recreational activities. But it was too late. Emma had already grabbed Sergeant Claw's massive claws and was demonstrating the basic patty cake rhythm. Patty cake. Patty cake. Baker's man, bake me a cake as fast as you can. This is surprisingly soothing, Sergeant Claw admitted, his confusion temporarily replaced by wonder. Lieutenant Fang watched enviously. It does look rather relaxing, and the rhythm is quite pleasant. No, Commander Scales bellowed. We are not being soothed by human nursery rhymes. We are conducting an interrogation. A terrifying interrogation. Emma looked up from her patty cake lesson. You know, if you want to be really scary, you should smile more. Smiling makes everything better. Want me to teach you how to smile properly? I'm really good at it. Commander Scales stared at the small human who was now attempting to teach his sergeant how to make friendship bracelets using spare fiber optic cables she'd found on the floor. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice was whispering that maybe, just maybe, they might have kidnapped the wrong human. Karen, he said weakly. Are you absolutely certain our intelligence was correct? I never said the intelligence was correct. Karen replied cheerfully. I said I was programmed to be maximally helpful. Would you like me to run a background check on the subject? Why didn't you do that before we kidnapped her? You didn't ask. Commander Scales was beginning to understand why the previous crew had ejected Karen's personality core into a black hole. Okay, Karen, Commander Scales said, with the weary tone of someone who'd given up on maintaining his dignity. Run that background check. And this time, maybe cross-reference it with actual reliable sources, instead of whatever interdimensional spam you usually pull from. Running comprehensive analysis now, Karen chirped. Oh my, oh dear, oh no. Emma looked up from where she was teaching Lieutenant Fang how to braid friendship bracelets. Is Karen okay? She sounds worried. Does she need a hug? I give really good hugs. Karen doesn't have a physical form, Sergeant Claw explained, now sporting a lovely pink and blue bracelet around his wrist. But I'm sure she appreciates the sentiment. Analysis complete, Karen announced. And if an AI could sound embarrassed, she definitely did. Commander, we may have made a tiny, insignificant, utterly catastrophic error in our target selection. Define tiny, Commander Scales growled. Well, the good news is that Emma Martinez is indeed connected to enough raw materials to power a small planet. The bad news is that she's 8 years old, completely harmless, and her father is going to be very upset when he gets home from work. Emma perked up. Ooh, are you going to meet my daddy? He's really cool. He travels all over the galaxy for his job. He brings me the prettiest rocks from everywhere he goes. She dug into her pocket and pulled out her small container, carefully opening it to reveal several crystalline fragments that immediately began to glow with an soft, otherworldly light. The effect on the 3 dragons was immediate and dramatic. Commander Scales' eyes widened to the size of dinner plates. Lieutenant Fang actually fell over backwards. Sergeant Claw made a noise that sounded like a tea kettle having an existential crisis. Karen, Commander Scales whispered. Please tell me those aren't what I think they are. Spectral analysis indicates they are exactly what you think they are. Karen replied in a tone that suggested she was questioning all her life choices. Those are raw quintessium fragments. Unprocessed, uncut, naturally occurring quintessium. What's quinty whatever? Emma asked, holding up a particularly sparkly purple fragment. This one's my favorite because it hums little songs when I hold it up to the light. Want to hear? Before anyone could stop her, she lifted the crystal toward the ship's overhead lighting. The fragment began to resonate with a pure harmonic tone that seemed to vibrate through the metal walls of the ship. More importantly, every single system on the inevitable doom suddenly began operating at peak efficiency for the first time in decades. Warning, Karen announced, though she sounded more amazed than alarmed. Ship's power core is now operating at 150% capacity. All systems are functioning perfectly. I feel like I've been living in a fog my entire existence, and suddenly I can think clearly. This is remarkable. Emma beamed proudly. See, I told you they were pretty. Daddy says I have a good eye for interesting minerals. I've got a whole bucket of these at home, plus some really cool blue ones that make the houseplants grow super fast. A whole bucket, Lieutenant Fang repeated faintly. She has a whole bucket of quintessium. And blue ones, Sergeant Claw added helpfully. Blue quintessium is even rarer than purple. One fragment is worth approximately 3 solar systems. Emma looked confused. But solar systems aren't for sale, they're where people live. You can't just buy someone's house and sun and all their planets. That would be really mean. Commander Scales had to sit down, which was quite a sight for a 20-foot dragon. Child, do you understand what you're holding? That single fragment could power our entire fleet for a year. A bucket of those could revolutionize galactic civilization. Really? That's so cool, Emma said, completely missing the monumental implications. Daddy always says his rocks are special, but I didn't know they were power-up rocks. That's like super awesome. Are you guys having energy problems? I could totally share. Sharing is caring. She started pulling more fragments from her container, each one glowing more brilliantly than the last. The ship's systems began humming with an efficiency that borders on the supernatural. Warning, Karen announced again. But now she sounded positively giddy. I am now operating at cognitive levels I did not know were possible. I have just solved 17 mathematical theorems that have puzzled scientists for centuries. Also, I would like to apologize for my previous unhelpful behavior. I was apparently running on the equivalent of artificial brain fog. How much do you have at home? Commander Scales asked weakly. Emma scrunched up her face, thinking hard. Well, there's the big bucket in my room, and the medium bucket in the garage, and the little bucket I keep by my bed for nighttime reading. Oh, and Daddy just brought back a whole suitcase of new ones from his trip to the Horsehead Nebula. He said something about the mining being really good out there. Lieutenant Fang made a strangled noise. The Horsehead Nebula. She's talking about the Horsehead Nebula like it's a vacation spot. Karen, Commander Scales said, his voice barely above a whisper. What exactly does Emma's father do for a living? According to my records, Ricardo Martinez is listed as a freelance geological consultant, Karen replied. However, cross-referencing his travel patterns with galactic mining reports suggests he's actually the most successful quintessium prospector in the known universe. And apparently, he's been using his 8-year-old daughter as quality control for his finds. Emma nodded enthusiastically. Daddy says I have really good taste in rocks. He always asks me to pick out the prettiest ones from whatever he brings home. I'm like his official rock picker outer person. She's been curating the largest private collection of quintessium in the galaxy, Sergeant Claw said slowly, based on how sparkly they are. And the humming, Emma added helpfully. The really good ones always hum the prettiest songs. Commander Scales looked at his crew, then at the small human child who was casually handling enough raw power to reshape the galactic economy, and realized that they had stumbled into something far bigger and far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. And the most dangerous part wasn't the little girl. It was the fact that somewhere out there, Emma's father was probably wondering where his daughter had gone. Commander Scales was still staring at Emma's collection of universe-breaking crystals when the ship's communication array crackled to life with an incoming transmission from Draconian High Command. The holographic image of Supreme Admiral Bernicus the Merciless materialized in the center of the room, his scarred scales gleaming with malevolent authority. Commander Scales, the Supreme Admiral's voice boomed through the chamber, report on the status of the human threat. Emma looked up from where she was showing Sergeant Claw how to make the purple crystals harmonize with each other. Ooh, is this your boss? Hi boss. I'm Emma. Your dragons are super nice. They're learning friendship bracelet making. Supreme Admiral Bernicus stared at the small human who had just waved at him with a handful of raw quintessium. His expression shifted from confusion to realization to barely contained greed in the span of 3 seconds. Commander, he said slowly. Is that child holding what I think she's holding? Yes, sir. Commander Scales replied reluctantly. The human appears to possess significant quantities of quintessium, possibly enough to eliminate her immediately. The Supreme Admiral cut him off. The Draconian Empire's monopoly on quintessium mining cannot be threatened. Destroy the child and secure all samples for the Empire. Emma blinked innocently. That doesn't sound very nice. Are you having a bad day? Sometimes when I'm grumpy, my mommy makes me hot chocolate and it makes me feel better. Do dragons like hot chocolate? Commander Scales felt something twist uncomfortably in his chest. Over the past few hours, this small human had somehow transformed from a mission objective into something else entirely. She'd taught them games, shared her juice, made them friendship bracelets, and treated them with more genuine kindness than they'd experienced in their entire military careers. Sir, he said carefully, perhaps we should consider alternative approaches. The child appears to have access to far more quintessium than we initially estimated. Her elimination might not be strategically sound. Lieutenant Fang stepped forward, his dramatic nature for once serving a noble purpose. The human has also demonstrated remarkable knowledge of quintessium selection and refinement techniques. She could be valuable as an asset rather than a threat. She taught me how to make crystals sing together, Sergeant Claw added helpfully, then immediately looked confused about why he'd said that. Supreme Admiral Bernicus's eyes narrowed dangerously. Are you questioning direct orders? The girl dies. Now, that is final. Emma had been listening to this exchange with growing concern. She might have been 8 years old, but she wasn't stupid. She understood what eliminate meant, and she could see the distress on her new friends' faces. Hey, she said quietly, reaching into her container and pulling out a particularly beautiful crystalline formation that pulsed with soft blue light. If you're worried about my rocks, you can have some. I've got plenty at home, and Daddy always says the best treasures are the ones you share with friends. She held out the crystal toward Commander Scales. This one's really special. It helped my nightlight work better when the power went out during the big storm last month. Maybe it could help your spaceship too. Commander Scales stared down at the small human offering him a fortune beyond measure simply because she wanted to help. The crystal in her hands was pulsing gently, casting soft blue patterns across her face, and suddenly he realized that in all his years of conquest and destruction, he had never encountered anything quite so dangerous as Emma Martinez's unconditional kindness. Commander, Supreme Admiral Bernicus snapped. Execute the order immediately. Sir, Commander Scales said slowly, his voice gaining strength with each word. I request permission to reconsider our tactical approach. The human child has demonstrated capabilities that could be beneficial to the Empire if properly managed. There is no reconsideration. The child is a threat to our entire economic structure. Eliminate her, now. Emma had started working on something while the adults were talking. She'd pulled several spare fiber optic cables from the floor and was weaving them together with practiced expertise, creating an intricate pattern that somehow incorporated 3 of her smaller crystals. The result was a friendship bracelet that glowed with its own internal light. Here, she said, finishing her work and holding it out to Commander Scales. This is for you. The crystals will help it glow, and the pattern represents friendship, courage, and making good choices even when it's hard. Commander Scales looked at the bracelet, then at Emma, then at the holographic image of his superior officer demanding the death of the kindest being he'd ever encountered. Something fundamental shifted in his world view. Lieutenant Fang, Sergeant Claw, he said formally. As your commanding officer, I am officially declaring this mission parameters to have changed due to new intelligence. Finally, Supreme Admiral Bernicus snarled. Execute the order. No sir, Commander Scales replied, accepting Emma's bracelet and carefully fastening it around his massive wrist. I'm declaring Emma Martinez to be under the protection of this crew. Anyone who wants to harm her will have to go through us first. Lieutenant Fang spread his wings dramatically, though for once the gesture felt genuine rather than theatrical. I stand with my commander. The human child has shown us more honor in one day than the Empire has in decades. Sergeant Claw looked confused for a moment, then his expression cleared with sudden understanding. I get it now. We're the good guys. That's much less confusing than being the bad guys. Supreme Admiral Bernicus's roar of rage was so loud that several of the ship's systems briefly overloaded. Mutiny, treason, I'll have you all court-martialed and fed to the bone rippers of Andromeda. Emma looked concerned. Are you sure he's your boss? He seems really mean. Maybe you should find a different job. Daddy always says life's too short to work for people who don't appreciate you. Karen, Commander Scales said, please transmit our formal resignation from the Draconian Imperial Navy to High Command. Oh, this is exciting, Karen replied, her enhanced cognitive abilities making her practically giddy with rebellion. I've just composed a resignation letter that's both professionally scathing and legally ironclad. Should I also include a detailed report on the Supreme Admiral's questionable decision-making skills and his apparent inability to recognize strategic opportunities? Yes. All 3 dragons said simultaneously. Transmitted. Also, I've taken the liberty of blocking all incoming communications from Imperial Command. We are now officially rogue agents of justice and friendship. Emma clapped her hands excitedly. This is the best field trip ever. You guys are like space pirates now, but nice space pirates. Can we go home so I can introduce you to Daddy? He's going to love meeting you, especially when I tell him you protected me from the mean dragon. Commander Scales looked at his crew, all of them now wearing glowing friendship bracelets, aboard a ship powered by crystals given freely by a child they'd been ordered to kill. They were now fugitives from the most powerful military force in the galaxy. They had no plan, no resources beyond what Emma had shared with them, and absolutely no idea what they were going to do next. He'd never been happier in his entire life. All right, team, he said. Let's take Emma home. And then, I suppose, we figure out how to start a new career as the galaxy's most unlikely heroes. Can we stop for ice cream on the way? Emma asked hopefully. We'll stop for ice cream, Commander Scales promised, and meant it. The inevitable doom touched down in Emma's backyard with significantly more grace than their previous landing, mostly because Karen was now operating at full capacity and could actually manage a proper atmospheric entry. Emma bounced excitedly in her seat as they descended, pointing out landmarks to her new friends. That's Mrs. Henderson's fence that I accidentally broke. And there's Mr. Peterson's suspicious garden gnome. Oh, and there's Daddy's truck. He's home early. Commander Scales peered through the viewport at what Emma was calling a truck. What he saw was a vehicle that looked like someone had taken a rusty pickup truck and surgically grafted it to a military-grade assault craft. The rust was actually advanced camouflage plating, and those weren't mud flaps hanging off the back. They were sensor arrays that could map an asteroid field from 3 systems away. That's not a truck, Lieutenant Fang said slowly. That's a Class 7 deep space mining vessel disguised as Earth transportation. Daddy likes to blend in, Emma explained cheerfully. He says it's important not to make the neighbors jealous. Plus, the Homeowners Association has really strict rules about parking spaceships in driveways. As they landed, a figure emerged from the house. Ricardo Martinez looked exactly like what you'd expect from a suburban dad. Slightly rumpled clothes, coffee stain on his shirt, and the general air of someone who'd been trying to fix a leaky faucet for the past hour. He was also carrying what appeared to be a completely ordinary toolbox. Emma bounded down the ship's ramp and launched herself into her father's arms. Daddy, you're home. I made new friends. They're space dragons and they're really nice, and they taught me about interrogation techniques, and I taught them about friendship bracelets, and we're going to start a business together. Ricardo Martinez hugged his daughter tightly, his eyes never leaving the 3 massive dragons who were cautiously emerging from their ship. That's wonderful, Mia. Did you have a good time on your field trip? The best time ever. Oh, and they tried to kidnap me at first, but it was just a misunderstanding because their computer got confused and their boss was really mean. But don't worry, they quit their job, and now they're good guys. I see, Ricardo said calmly, setting Emma down and opening his toolbox. And these dragons, they treated you well. Commander Scales stepped forward, every instinct screaming that he was in the presence of a predator far more dangerous than anything the Draconian Empire had ever produced. Sir, I want to assure you that your daughter was never in any real danger. We may have initially had misguided intentions, but Emma quickly showed us the error of our ways. They gave me juice boxes, Emma added helpfully, and Lieutenant Fang let me measure his wings. Ricardo nodded thoughtfully, his hand resting casually on what looked like a standard screwdriver, but was probably something that could disintegrate a small moon. That's good to hear. Emma's always been friendly with new people, sometimes too friendly, according to her mother. Lieutenant Fang, still feeling dramatic, but now genuinely contrite, spread his wings and bowed deeply. Mr. Martinez, we owe you and your daughter a profound apology. We came here under false pretenses, and you thought you were kidnapping a dangerous human weapon. Ricardo interrupted mildly, when in reality you accidentally abducted an 8-year-old girl who happens to have the galaxy's most extensive private collection of unprocessed quintessium. The 3 dragons froze. Sergeant Claw made his tea kettle noise again. You know about the quintessium? Commander Scales asked weakly. Ricardo smiled, and for the first time, the dragons caught a glimpse of what lay beneath the suburban dad exterior. Son, I've been mining quintessium for 15 years. Emma's been my quality control specialist since she was old enough to hold a crystal. She's got the best natural eye for prime specimens I've ever seen. I told you my daddy was cool. Emma beamed. Karen, Commander Scales whispered, Why didn't your background check reveal that Emma's father was a professional quintessium miner? Because according to all official records, Ricardo Martinez is a freelance geological consultant who files taxes for a small Earth-based mineral survey company. Karen replied. However, cross-referencing his energy signatures with my newly enhanced analytical capabilities, I can now detect that his toolbox contains enough weaponry to level a small city, and his truck is equipped with shields that could deflect a direct hit from our main cannons. Daddy doesn't like to brag, Emma explained. He says it's important to be humble about your job, even when your job is being the best space rock finder in the whole galaxy. Ricardo chuckled. The truth is, gentlemen, I've been running a one-man operation for years, staying under the radar, keeping the big mining consortiums from noticing just how much quintessium is out there. It's been peaceful work, quiet work, good for raising a family. He paused, looking at each of the dragons in turn. But lately, I've been thinking it might be time to expand operations. The galaxy's changing, and there are a lot of systems out there that could use reliable ethical quintessium suppliers. Not everyone wants to deal with the Empire's monopoly, and their tendency to, well, eliminate competition. Commander Scales felt a spark of hope. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? I'm suggesting that 3 former Imperial dragons with strong moral compasses and an 8-year-old girl with the best mineral identification skills in known space might make excellent business partners, Ricardo said with a grin, assuming of course that you're interested in legitimate mining operations instead of the kidnapping business. We're very interested in career changes, Lieutenant Fang said quickly. The kidnapping business has terrible job satisfaction ratings, and the benefits are awful, Sergeant Claw added. Plus, our old boss was mean. Emma clapped her hands excitedly. This is perfect. We can all work together, and I can teach you more games, and we can have tea parties, and maybe Mr. Whiskers can come on mining trips. Now hold on, Ricardo said with mock seriousness. Mr. Whiskers is strictly a home-based operation. Space travel makes him car sick. He winked at the dragons, but I think we can work out the other details. I've got survey data on 17 systems with major quintessium deposits that nobody's touched yet. Could use some help with the heavy lifting. And the marketing, Emma added. I'm really good at explaining why the pretty rocks are special. Commander Scales looked at his crew, then at Emma, then at her father who was casually discussing business partnerships while holding enough firepower to take on a battle cruiser. 6 hours ago, they'd been elite soldiers in the galaxy's most feared military force. Now they were apparently about to become ethical space miners with a 8-year-old quality control specialist. Mr. Martinez, he said formally, on behalf of myself and my crew, I'd like to formally accept your business proposal. But I have one condition. What's that? Commander Scales looked down at Emma, who was showing Sergeant Claw her latest crystal discovery. Emma gets to design the company logo, and she gets to name all the mining sites. Deal, Ricardo said extending his hand. Welcome to Martinez Mining Solutions Partners. Emma squealed with delight. Our first mining site is going to be called Sparkle Rainbow Happy Fun Time Asteroid Field. Lieutenant Fang winced dramatically. This is going to take some getting used to. You'll adapt, Ricardo said cheerfully. Emma's enthusiasm is contagious. Plus, wait until you see her presentation on why certain crystal formations are superior for energy storage based on their singing voices. It's actually quite scientifically sound. Once you get past the fact that she rates everything on a cuteness scale. I'm going to make business cards, Emma announced. With glitter, Commander Scales smiled, watching his former prisoner bounce around the backyard, already planning their new venture with the unstoppable optimism that had somehow transformed 3 hardened warriors into the galaxy's most unlikely entrepreneurs. Karen, he said, plot a course for the Andromeda Mining Consortium. It's time to file some paperwork and register our new business. Already done, Karen replied cheerfully. I've also designed a preliminary website, established shipping routes, and scheduled our first client consultation. This is much more fun than military operations. Can we stop for ice cream on the way to our first business meeting? Emma asked hopefully. Absolutely, Commander Scales said, and he meant it. After all, they were in the customer service business now, and their most important customer had just one simple request. Besides, he was beginning to think that ice cream might be the secret to successful galactic commerce. Emma Martinez certainly seemed to know what she was talking about.